Reclaim my
Equity crowdfunding on WVON.
So this is, like the crowdfunding quarterly one. This is it. So we always like to create invest, impact, and power.
Okay.
Throw it out there as well.
Hey, Blaine.
Hey.
Is there a way from the lower line is? No?
Good evening, Chicago. Thank you for joining me on this unseasonably warm Wednesday evening. This is Amara Enyia filling in tonight from 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. in the studio. I am very excited about tonight's show. We have had a great conversation in the first hour from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. talking about the confirmation hearings with Betsy DeVos and the implications of that for the country. It was, for those of you who are just tuning in, frankly a disaster. It showed the lack of competence from someone who's never worked in a public school, children never went to a public school, is not an educator, has no background in education, but is a billionaire, and so has the money to influence individuals who drive education policy. She has done this in the state of Michigan, and we have seen, and you've heard some of the results of that, especially as it relates to her stance on vouchers and charter schools and so on and so forth. And she had expressed many times in the confirmation hearing just that lack of knowledge, that ignorance to some of the more important issues, especially when we talk about kids with disabilities and the federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which protects the rights of children with disabilities, everything from cerebral palsy to autism, to make sure that they have access to a free and appropriate public education. That's something that she had no clue on. Another thing that I have to put out there, because it was almost a bizarre part of the confirmation hearing, is when she was talking about grizzly bears. So when asked about the question of whether or not guns should be in schools, her response was that you might need guns to shoot the grizzlies that might be endangering kids. So it was just that kind of hearing. You see what happens, yeah. So you have to laugh. You have to laugh. And I actually have in the studio with me, just very, very excited to have with me, Dwayne Hirsch. He is with the Small Business Advocacy Council, has been a tireless champion of the issues that affect small businesses in the city of Chicago and really across the state. He's also with Caldwell Banker Real Estate. And he is with the Native Sons of Chicago. So we have just a chock full next couple of hours to talk about some of the work that he's been doing around the city and around the state. And we also have Al Prudeaux, who is the managing director of the Native Sons of Chicago, right?
Yes.
Perfect.
Thanks so much for having me.
Perfect. And we'll be just providing a lot of background information as to the work that's been done. We're going to talk a lot about economic development, just some of the major principles that undergird this economic development work in our efforts to revitalize communities, as well as specifically with the interstate equity crowdfunding platform, which has the power to be transformative. And both of these gentlemen are doing this work. So as you're listening to them talk about the work that they're doing, feel free to call in. The number is 773-591-1690. So definitely feel free to join the conversation. But before we jump into that, I want to get both of your takes on the confirmation hearing for Betsy DeVos. I don't know if you heard it, watched it, saw clips, but what was your take if you did see any of it?
I heard the grizzly bear comments you made, and we were listening to it a little bit in the car on the way over here. I didn't hear any of the confirmation hearings. I've been doing crowdfunding presentations since 7:45 this morning, and Al has been busy doing just the same. But for me, what I'll tell you is this: it doesn't, even hearing the grizzly bear comment, assuming that you're not talking about somebody in Alaska, it doesn't surprise me in this sense. I have never been a believer that there's ever been anybody who held that office that honestly, truly worked and did everything that they could to build proper education in our community. If they had been doing that over all these years, then we would not be in the state and condition that we're in right now. So, she might not be worthy of holding that position, but if we look back retrospectively, we would ask ourselves, what we're and to take that on a local level, I remember Dr. Ruth Love and Manfred Bird and what was the other one, Kimbrough and Duncan. I was out of school by the time I think he came in, but these were all the people, and our schools was on strike every year. The schools, schools were never really up to what I think most of our expectations of what schools should really be. They've never been up to that level.
I think you bring up an excellent point, because if we do look at what happened, so for example, when Arnie Duncan was the Secretary of Education, I had strong critiques. Mm-hmm. And this is someone who formerly headed up Chicago Public Schools, who's really been responsible for a lot of what I call a race to the bottom. When we talk about evaluation, we talk about accountability. He's been largely behind a lot of that, and he held this post prior to. So it's certainly not to say that everyone who held it before Betsy DeVos was fantastic.
Right.
I think in this case it was just the level of
right. Incompetence is frightening. Right. I can understand that. I mean, I didn't see it today, but again, my thought in that space is around the point that on some level they're all the same, and we're ultimately going to get the same result until we start taking those matters into our own hands on a local level and stop relying on people in those ivory towers to come down and build our sticks and bricks, if you will. It's just not going to happen, and I don't trust any of them to do that. And I'm always going to be looking for the solution on the ground that works us around being a victim of an administration where she's the Secretary of Education.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So because these are my two favorite issues, education and economic development. So we're going to take actually a larger chunk of my hosting tonight to talk about the economic development issue, because I believe so strongly that this is the key if we're going to really move in the right direction. If we're talking about empowering communities, not just sort of putting a Band-Aid on the issues, not becoming dependent or reliant on government or on some savior that's supposed to save our communities. We really economically have to be viable. We have to be empowered. And so that's why I wanted to have you both in the studio tonight to just talk about, first to get your take, because I want people to have some context for what drove you to this work. What led you to doing this work around interstate equity crowdfunding? I want to get that, and then we can define it so that the listeners have an opportunity to understand what it is, and then talk about how specifically this process has rolled out for you.
So to let you know how the Native Sons of Chicago actual piece came about, I actually once upon a time was the housing director for the city. And one of my mandates was to do the redevelopment for Madden Wells, for Robert Taylor, Stateway, and a sprinkling of other ones on the south side.
And this is, just for the listeners, this is Al Prudeaux. He's the managing director of Native Sons of Chicago.
And so when you think about it, I'm a Bronzeville boy, grew up on 35th and King Drive. And so for me, taking part in that process at the beginning was everything in the world to me, because it gave me the chance not only to develop those neighborhoods, but in some respect, those were my neighborhoods. Those are the neighborhoods that I grew up. Those are the neighborhoods I had friends that lived in. And so when we looked at the budgets, I was on the finance side. So when we looked at the budgets, we saw upwards of $1.2 billion. That was government money. Forget the private sector money. The banks, the city banks, at the time, the LaSalle's of the world. But you had $1.2 billion of HUD money, city money, that was allocated to rebuild the community, and whatever community means to you. You also had vast pockets of poverty. Unemployment was rampant. So if you think about it in a very theoretical standpoint, 1.2 billion on one side, tons of people that need the jobs, the training, the everything on the other side. Now, when the actual rubber hit the road, and the implementation came in, implementation being the bulldozers came in to redevelop, a lot of those residents were pushed to the side. Listen, we'll take care of this for you. We'll take those jobs. We being people from outside of that community, outside of our community. And at the end of the day, not only did a lot of these residents not have a place to live, they were parceled out with different types of vouchers and different types of programs. Once again, in our history, the wealth was taken away by someone else. And so, even though I left the city, I had a very successful private sector career. And this actually is a private sector endeavor also. This isn't a not-for-profit. This is not a not-for-profit. But with that, it always carried with me, what if we could have a mechanism by which we develop our own communities, we're responsible for our own communities, and we control the dollars that go into it. We control the job component that goes into it. So when I was approached with this equity crowdfunding piece in 2015, late 2015, it was on the cusp of it actually going into law that January. Theoretically, January 1st of 2016, everything was going to launch and we were going to be off to the races, but of course with anything that has to go through state approval, we launched yesterday. So it only took us a year to actually fulfill that mission. So I would love to tell you more about the Native Sons project. I guess we're going to talk about equity crowdfunding first, but everything in this arena, in any arena we work in, gets a tag name, a tag line. And so what they're calling this I wish I made this, I wish I had trademarked this, but it's being called impact investing. And when you think about that, it really resonates, because with your small amount of money, you're really making a direct impact on something that you believe. Finally it's marrying your money with your values. And in that respect, we can all prosper.
Definitely. So I want to see if we can take a quick break just for a second, because I want to come back and talk more about impact investing, and then to really use that as a segue into the interstate equity crowdfunding platform and the work that's been done thus far to get it to finally to launch.
Yes.
We know what that process looks like. But I want to use that to get into that conversation. So we're going to take just a very short break. Again, this is Amara Enyia filling in, 773-591-1690. Feel free to join this conversation. I have in the studio with me Dwayne Hirsch and Al Prudeaux, who are with the Native Sons of Chicago, and we'll be right back.
All right.
Very small.
So we're on a quick break right now, but we're going to be talking about equity crowdfunding. We're going to talk a little bit about Native Sons of Chicago. I want to introduce you all. Say hi to Amara Enyia, the host of the show tonight, and Al Prudeaux, the Native Son over there, hanging out. We had a huge event tonight in Hyde Park, jam-packed room, great reception. Our project is live on Vestlo, VESTLO.com, and you can invest right now as little as $250 in our project and go about making it work. So if you watched any of those previous videos that I was doing, I was explaining the concept, showing you what the intent is behind it, but now it's actually live, and you get an opportunity to invest and make a contribution with your investment dollars. And like my partner here just said, matching up your money with your values and making that work. Not on a donation basis. We're not asking for anybody's donation. This is an investment from which you have a right to expect a return. Gwen, I see you. You say you visited Vestlo. Did you get you a couple of them units, girl? You better go get you a couple of them units. They ready for you. Chris, some of y'all, thank you for watching. Peter Comby, LaShondra Puck Billions, thank you for watching. Keisha Kadan, Simeon Henderson, M.K. Gamble, Monica K, we love you. Sonia Parker, Sheldon Smith, my man, Dovetail, congratulations, man, on everything you've been doing. Brian Mullins, man, thank you very much, sir. And Mark Allen, bro, we love you. Thank you. Stay strong. Amara said, hey, what's up, Brian? Marcus Moreland. Hey, look, this is our guy that's going to do the dump work. Marcus, we need a proposal. We're going to have you come down and meet. You can come in and do some of the work that we're going to need in the hauling side of getting these projects redeveloped, brother. You know I got you on that. Marvin Muhammad, thank you, sir. I'm ready to talk to you. Michael came out tonight and let me know that you guys got something to talk about, so we're definitely going to do that. So, yeah, we're ready. Like you say, Mark, we structured, focused, and positioned. Don't be LOL at me either, Gwen. I see you. You better get the units. All right, let's go.
So we are... I need like a few more seconds. I need like another minute. Can I have like another minute?
If you need more information on equity crowdfunding, you can go to ilequitycrowdfunding.com. That's the SBAC's crowdfunding website. You can get information there. You can go to nativesonsofchicago.com to learn more about our project. And then, of course, Vestlo, that's VESTLO.com, to be able to take a look at the investment and see what it takes to get in and all of the different structures and some of the other things that are being offered. We want to get this done quickly. We're only raising $500,000, guys. That's $1,000 from 500 of you, and it's all kind of combinations as to how we can do that. But the minimum is $250, so it's an achievable goal.
Of course, I'm in the studio on WVON. We're doing double live today.
Oh, right, double live.
So we have Dwayne Hirsch, who is in the studio with us, and we also have Al Prudeaux, who is here. Both individuals working with Native Sons of Chicago. We're going to be talking this evening about interstate equity crowdfunding as a viable economic development tool. We're going to be hitting some key issues about investment in the communities, how to empower communities, and do it in a way that we own it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
We see the long-term benefits. So you're going to hear a lot of talk about impact investing, which we just touched on a little bit, the interstate equity platform, and some of the underlying economic development issues. So we're going to get into that right now. Feel free to call in 773-591-1690. We'll get back on the air. Good evening, Chicago. This is Amara Enyia filling in on WVON 1690. I'm here with you on this unseasonably warm Wednesday from 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. And I have to give a shout out. That was actually one of my favorite songs from Nas. It's called One Mic. All I need is one mic. I would spit the first verse, second verse in its entirety. That's
well, I'm gonna get that on live when we go to the next break, just so you know.
Okay. Look, I don't play around with Nas. So we have great music with us tonight and some great guests in the studio. I am so pleased to have with me in the studio Dwayne Hirsch, who is part of the Native Sons of Chicago, also in real estate, we'll call Little Banker, and also with the Small Business Advocacy Council, who he and I have worked a lot in the past on this interstate equity legislation and just some of the advocacy work around it. We also have in the studio Al Prudeaux, who used to work in the city of Chicago, so we have that in common. Used to be housed in City Hall, but is now the managing director of Native Sons of Chicago. And when we started the show, we were just talking about the platform, some of the underlying economic development issues, but Al was talking about impact investing, and I wanted us to take a break and then to come back so we could delve a little bit more into that, because that's a great way to open up the conversation about the implications of what equity crowdfunding can mean for the community. And so Al, I wanted to give you a little bit more opportunity to go deeper into this impact investing, the notion of impact investing. And just for full transparency, I was actually in San Francisco about a month ago on a panel with the head of the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, that's
Mark Zuckerberg's wife,
Foundation, Mercy Corps, Omidyar Networks. These are organizations that what they do is impact investing, and we were talking about this tool as it's still fairly emergent, so it's not matured, but it's something that's emerged as one of the most powerful, I think, tools that can help to do some of the work that we're seeking to, some of the change that we're seeking to see in our community. So I wanted to give you a chance to talk more about that and how that sort of influences your work in the interstate equity crowdfunding platform.
Okay, without a doubt. So when you think of equity crowdfunding, that's to take the distinction away from crowdfunding in general. A lot of people think of crowdfunding as Kickstarter, GoFundMe. Those are actually donation-based. So you're not actually looking for a return on your money. You're just giving out of the kindness of your heart, or maybe they give you a perk like a T-shirt, or if it's a product-based initiative, then they'll send you a product once the actual product is developed. Equity crowdfunding, though, is a fancy term for something that's been around for thousands of years. It's people coming together, investing a little bit of money to create a larger pool for an initiative that they wanted. Now, you'll hear a lot about the Jobs Act and what Obama did and all the good that's kind of come out of it, but to be quite honest, to be transparent, the entire reason that even became an issue was because with the law, with the Accredited Investor Act, you couldn't advertise. So it was an old boy network. It was structured as an old boy network. If I knew you, or you were my family, I could offer you these investment opportunities, but I couldn't advertise it. Well, now with the advent of LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, even our president has embraced social media, keeping those kind of things a secret is very hard to do. So that was actually the impetus for all this. Now, once you let the cat out of the bag, and once you let the secret out of the bag, people are saying, well, wait, why don't I have an opportunity to invest in these businesses? And so then that kind of pushed the second level of it to allow both accredited and non-accredited. Now, accredited, for those of you that don't know, is someone that either has $1 million net worth or has made $250,000 every year for the last 2 years with the expectation of making it again in the future. And it becomes a little larger for obviously couples and things of that nature. There's a couple other people that kind of fit into that caveat, but that's pretty much the gist of it. So with equity crowdfunding, especially the way that we're looking to do it, there are two components. There's a practical application and a theoretical application. Now the practical application, you always hear stories that there aren't enough resources in the community. If only the banks were lending. If only I had the capital to do this. Now it creates a very good dynamic. Let's say you have a coffee shop and you need $100,000 to open it. You could go to a lender, and that lender could loan you $100,000. And that's cool, you have the resources that you want, but that's about all. Now let's say of that $100,000 that you need, you got it. You got $1,000 from 100 members of your community. You don't think that every time they want a cup of coffee, they're not coming to you? If someone even mentions coffee, they're saying, oh, you know what, go down to the corner cafe, I'm part owner even though it's only $1,000. So now, not only do you have the economic resources available to you, you are truly a community business. And so that's really what it means for a practical application. Now the theoretical application becomes, and we talked about this at our seminar this evening, the elimination of they. Because my whole life we've heard they don't invest in our community, they don't provide resources to us, they don't do a lot of things for us. And now with equity crowdfunding, it allows the they to be replaced by us. Right. And you have no excuse.
So that's very powerful, and I want to drill down just on a couple of things, and Dwayne, you can perhaps talk in more detail about this notion. So especially on the practical application, because one of the things that those who, and you've worked in City Hall, I worked in City Hall, and so we know what those tools are, those traditional economic development tools that are very limited, right? So you have TIFs, for example, that people, a lot of people don't understand what TIFs are or how they're supposed to be leveraged for development. You have many new things that have been announced over the last year about this fund, that pot of money that's supposed to be used for economic development. But a lot of the issue in challenged communities is the issue of ownership, right? So it's the issue of ownership and the access to capital. Now we have our traditional financial institutions. So, and I worked, because I worked with the chamber as director of a chamber of commerce, so I work with financial institutions all the time who do that more traditional lending. So if you just want access to a bank loan. But we also know about the issues of credit and credit access and credit quality, specifically in challenged communities and specifically in the Black community, that will prove to be a barrier to accessing some of those loans that could be used to seed startup capital. So what this does, and when you can talk in more detail about this, is it removes that barrier, right? And this is what Al was mentioning. Well, we couldn't get a loan from the bank, right? That's often been the reason why you didn't move forward with your business plan. So this actually removes that barrier. And then the second issue that I think is absolutely critical for us to talk about is that issue of the sense of ownership by individuals in the community who buy into that business, that establishment is viable, because there's a completely different approach to patronizing that business, to how we talk about that business, and not even just the business, but the surrounding area, to how we care about it if we feel a sense of ownership. So Dwayne, I wanted you to talk a little bit more in detail about that.
Yeah, so in every community right now, you have a certain subset of businesses that exist. You have grocery store, or you have the barber shop, the beauty salon, the nail shop, or whatever. You have laundromats, dry cleaners. You have all of these little staple things that a community kind of needs. The objective in this is that if we start these projects, invest in these projects in these areas, and now we own each one of those entities in these areas, now we get that benefit from them. We get the benefit of, first of all, it kind of overcomes the impediments of the sustainability of these businesses. So now you've got the access to capital issue out of the way. You've got the community support issue out of the way because everybody in the community that invested in it is going to go and support it now. A big issue with us is entitlement in business. So now I'm saying now that the sense of entitlement that a black business owner feels now is shifted to responsibility to the 500 to 200 people in your neighborhood that just invested in you, that walk in the door to get that service and expect more from you and hold you accountable. The security issue, whether it's the guy that's standing outside selling loose squares or asking for change or just throwing paper around, whatever the case is, or even coming in the store with ill intentions. When you have an invested community, the no snitch rule changes, the idea of what happens with that person and whether or not how we're going to engage the police in those situations, all that changed because now we're invested. It's not anybody else's store, it's ours. And that's something that changes not 5 years from now. It changes the moment that campaign takes place. So when the Native Sons Project is done and we start redeveloping these homes and stuff, and Al will talk about that shortly, but that's a dynamic that changes the moment that we close that deal and start going in there and doing the physical work, because it'll be our community, our business owners in there doing that work, and then hiring young people from inside our community to help and get themselves involved in the workforce. So we're looking to resolve issues and take pressure off of our municipal leaders who seem to be dumbfounded about it as to how to pull that off.
They haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah, but we have, and we're ready.
And to my business owners out there, I mean, when you study finance, they always talk about the small business owner. There are two kinds of investors. There's the traditional investor, and then there's your customers. So it becomes kind of squeezing the balloon. Which do you concentrate on more? You can focus just on getting new customers, and that will self-fund your business. Or you can concentrate on getting investors, but you do that at the expense of getting more customers. With this kind of a model, it actually marries the two together, because you have your investors are also your customers.
And I have a question that's coming in. So we have our Facebook Live viewers. Thank you guys for tuning in. Irvin, love you. Chaparral, I'm going to get to your question because I want the listeners and the viewers to understand this. So the question is whether or not they own a percentage of your business. So I think people are trying to understand, if you invest, do they own a percentage of your business?
Yeah, so with the with the Native Sons of Chicago initiative in particular, we're issuing 2,000, they call them units. And traditionally they were called shares, but Illinois is making us call them units, but they work side by side. They work very similar. So you would be buying a unit, and that unit, just as a regular equity stock, would accumulate in value over the course of time. So every quarter it's priced. So let's say it's a 250 unit today, it may be worth 350 a year from now, and on and on and on. So when you sell it, you would sell your unit, not just the,
But the raise that we're doing, we're selling essentially 20% ownership, equity ownership in Native Sons of Chicago.
Right. So can you explain more about Native Sons of Chicago, how it came about? I feel like there's a nice backstory there to how the two of you started working together. And actually, before that, probably you and I should talk about the early work of this legislation. So this was actually part of legislation that we worked on. Was it 2014?
Yeah, it was. We were working to lobby for it in 14 together, early 15, and then we got it passed in 15.
Right.
So in separate silos, Al had grabbed it and was starting to build a concept from it. I shared my thoughts about what to do with it with a gentleman named Hector, who is one of the owners of Veslo, the portal where these investments are being made. And he married us together and said, hey, you guys need to talk to each other. And we got in the room. It was me, him, and Omari together. It was like a love fest. It was like, oh, you was thinking that? I was thinking the same thing. And we on the same page. But it's a lot deeper than that for Al in terms of how he got to that point. But that's kind of how we came together to create what the impetus of what this would ultimately become.
Right. And so what was it like? Because I remember in 2014 when we were sort of starting this process and explaining to people what equity crowdfunding is. Now, this actually exists in other states. So
right.
Illinois was sort of, I don't want to say late to the game. But
yes, we were. Yeah.
Well, we were late to the game with it as being able to have this in the suite of tools that we have access to.
Mm-hmm.
But what was it like in those early stages of trying to do the initial education, to educate people as to how this could be leveraged when we talk about economic development, how this tool could be leveraged?
Well, everybody is concerned about the education component. We got to make sure that people are educated and understand what's going on. So the question that I get a lot, and we got tonight, is are people doing this? Has this been done before?
Right.
And everybody wants to see examples of it done. This has been being done on an accredited investor level for a long time. On an equity crowdfunding level, like what we're talking about with non-accredited everyday citizens, it's been going on all over the country. And on interstate levels in many states, even Texas had it, where you can invest in oil. They had a portal for oil industry-related crowdfunding raises called Crowdfunding, investing in oil stocks or oil-related businesses. So some places can make those very specific to an industry like they did with oil, but there's different things going on. So if you go to some of these sites, and I've been showing those examples, showed some tonight and in the live videos, there's places they've raised $800,000 to open up a distillery, brew houses and restaurants raising $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. So it's been going on all over the country. So it's kind of it's kind of moving. We're just kind of late jumping on the train. Yeah.
Illinois is a little late. So the way that I came to interstate equity crowdfunding is actually a little bit different. So I was always a big proponent of worker-owned cooperatives. Mm-hmm. So this is a concept, the cooperative economic model. Right. So if examples are in Germany, they're actually one of the strongest examples in Germany, and also in Emilia-Romagna, in Spain. Also
UK is hot with equity crowdfunding too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's how I came to this, because of looking at what does it look like? What does a business model look like where the employees are actually the owners, right? So the idea was to move away from the traditional CEO employee model where you have the salaries 300 to 1 and you have these horrible working conditions and then the lack of buy-in, right? So you don't really feel that you're a part of that business. You're
us against them, right?
Exactly, that us against them dynamic. And so I had always been a big proponent of worker-owned cooperatives, and how do we get that in Chicago? How do we build up the notion of a worker-owned cooperative where the employees actually own the business, they're vested, they have a stake in the business? And so that was what led me to interstate equity crowdfunding, which is a little bit different, but still when you talk about the role of feeling vested, especially in challenged communities where if the owners of the businesses don't look like you or don't identify with you, you're less likely to feel that business is a part of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And that's a huge issue, at least I see it in where I live, and I'm sure you've probably seen it where you live. So that was what brought me to interstate equity crowdfunding, and the challenge has been broadening people's horizons to see how this can be used and what they need to do to become a part of it. So when you're giving your pitch, what do you instruct people to do if they're looking to, what are those first steps for them even to find out more information about what this tool is and where they can go to get more information?
So the SBAC, the Small Business Advocacy Council, we hosted an informational this morning with the Village of Park Forest. And like I've said to people, and I'll say this right now, so if you guys have a church group, an investment group, a neighborhood group, a block club that want to learn about equity crowdfunding, myself, Al, Omari, we'll get out there, we'll give you an informational session and kind of show you the pitch, kind of show you what you need to do and how it works. ILequitycrowdfunding.com is a site you can go to get some information. there's a blog called, it's Crowdfunding Insider, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Crowdfunding Insider is a blog site that you can go to. It's got tons of articles on successful projects, educational information, and it's really, don't study too hard and what do you say, study long, study wrong. It's really kind of simple, but sometimes people overcomplicate it. So I know people who have pitched me, for instance, for Kickstarter money for a campaign for something they were doing, but then as soon as I said equity crowdfunding, they got all confused and seemed to, no, it's the same concept, except that in this case you have an opportunity or a reasonable right to expect to get something in return, presuming that the project is successful and such. You can do that. So that's the simple gist of it. But like I said, we're happy to go anywhere that we're called upon to go and teach this to people, let them know that it's how it works, all of the ins and outs. We had a great informational session tonight in Hyde Park. We had a jam-packed house. A lot of people asked a lot of very good questions.
Speaking of which,
we answered them all.
Question. So the question is there a regulation on investors, for example, a minimum to invest for this group? So is there a minimum investment that you're asking potential investors from?
Yes, so with the Native Sons initiative in particular, we've issued with the state 2,000 units, which is synonymous with 2,000 shares. Each share is $250. If you are a non-accredited investor, you can buy up to 20 shares, 20 units, which works out to be about $5,000. So,
okay, so 5,000 is the minimum investment.
The maximum.
The maximum.
The minimum is $250.
$250.
$250. The maximum for a non-accredited investor is $5,000. If you are accredited, it's sky's the limit. You can buy the rest of the shares, the rest of the units. Now, I want to piggyback on one thing that was said as far as how to get this, and I can speak to this because we've gone through the state ringer on this one. Equity crowdfunding is not a substitute for a poor business plan. You have to have a very solid business plan. Where equity crowdfunding supersedes maybe bank financing or traditional investment financing, and a lot of people miss this. A lot of people say, well, I'm just going to get the money and I'm going to take my idea and run with it. You also have to realize you may end up with 500, and this can be a good thing and a bad thing, 500 consultants to your business, 500 resources. Not every business needs the money. Money's always great, but you not only have now 500 advocates, you have 500 potential mentors, people that know someone that knows someone that knows someone. The off-topic funny story. I went to Penn, and one of our graduates was, oh my God, the singer.
John Legend.
John Legend.
How did you forget?
How could John Legend? So the funny story about him, as with most Penn graduates, he got a consulting job after graduation. He always wanted to be a singer. And one of his friends that he'd been singing for years, just out of the blue, a year or two after graduation, said, "Oh, that's great. Oh, by the way, my cousin's Kanye West. I can introduce you to him." So the context that you make that you may not have even expected is another benefit of equity crowdfunding and actually putting the power of your community behind you.
Right. Now I wanted to, so someone asked about that website, and I want to get that website down again so that we can make sure that our viewers have that. So Dwayne, can you repeat that website for us?
There was two of them. I mentioned ilequitycrowdfunding.com. The next one is crowdfundinginsider.com. And if you feel reasonably certain that you understand what we're discussing here tonight, you're welcome to go to Vestlo, that's VESTLO.com, and take a look at the offering. Now, once you subscribe to the website, this is the portal that you're going to. This is a Secretary of State approved portal, which was the first one that got that approval. And this is where, you go and you can see everything that's loaded up, all of our business plan, private placement memorandum, executive summary, all of that's in there. Everything you need to make an informed decision is there. Again, that information has been vetted by the portal itself, and the Secretary of State has reviewed, they don't review the plan to say, okay, these guys are a winner. That's not what their job is to do. They're checking the viability of it as a legitimate opportunity and not a scam.
Okay,
so to speak.
What differentiates a accredited investor from just a regular investor? So what are the qualifications to be accredited investor?
So again, there are 5 criteria, and this is by the SEC, by the IRS and the SEC have come up with these regulations. The 2 most common ones: you either have $1 million net worth, or you've made $250,000 as an individual, $500,000 as a married couple. Every year for the last 2 years, with the expectations, very important, the expectation that you'll make it in subsequent years. And the reason behind that, investments are made with money that you're not afraid to lose. So they're figuring with $1 million net worth, you can take down a maybe riskier investment, and if it goes sideways, if it goes south, if it goes the way of MySpace, for instance, then you're not hurt. So
Right.
you want to, and that's the thing with these type of investors, these accredited investors, they've seen these kind of projects for years. They've vetted these kind of projects for years. It's only recently that they've been made available to the mom and pop. Now, what the state has done, they've said, we're going to put a cap of $5,000 per project. So let's just say you inherited $100,000. You can't invest more than $5,000 in any given project in any given year.
And that's to ensure that no one has too much of a stake in the
It's got nothing to do with that. An accredited investor could come in right now and take my entire float right now. It's to protect that mom and pop that may not be sophisticated
Right.
enough to actually make an informed decision. Maybe
Right.
they just love the speeches that Prudeaux and Dwayne Hirsch give, and they want to just empty their savings accounts. There is a check and balance to that.
But there's another component to that too, though, another opportunity there, in that if that person wanted to invest that entire $100,000, let's say, and they can only put up to $5,000 in any one, they can diversify that across a spectrum of investments, and now they own a diversified portfolio of Main
Which
Street
is
investments.
advisable, actually.
Oh,
from a
absolutely.
finance standpoint.
Yeah, you want to diversify it and have a little bit in Native Sons and something in what Amara's doing, or whatever the case might be. And that's really the beauty of it now. And one thing I want to say is this: when you're teaching now, this also gives us an opportunity to teach our children investment in a different language set, right? So now we're not teaching them about puts and viaticals and all these other Wall Street complex terms. Now you can teach them investment in your community, riding down the block, saying, we own this, we own that, and encouraging and inspiring them to do something, because this is an outlet for their creativity. The creativity that's coming out of Blue 1647, who's going to finance that? When the VCs are looking at us with side eyes because of where we're from, or because of the credit issue, or they're overly judging your life and where you're from, who's going to be the outlet for those investments that Emil is pulling out of there? It's going to be us. It's going to be equity crowdfunding, where we can be legitimately concerned in the veracity of the project and the veracity of the managers of the project, the jockeys, if you will, of that project, and not be concerned about those piddly little things sometimes that they use as a benchmark just to shove you out.
Right.
It's not that they're really concerned. You got people, I know people that, I used to do auto finance. You would have people walk in a dealership that literally got $2 million in the bank and a 525 credit score. Mm-hmm. But, but he can go do whatever the hell he want to do, you know what I mean? Because he's got money to do that. So, but it's not always an indicator of a person's capability to pull off something that they've been training for, or learning for their lifetime, or went to school to study for.
Right.
It actually makes us investors and community owners versus the traditional consumer role.
Mm-hmm.
Just when I point to this a lot in our different speeches, I was amazed at how many people were jumping for joy that there was a Starbucks, a Chipotle, and a Whole Foods in Inglewood. Now
That's a whole long conversation.
yeah, that's fine.
We'll
But,
have another time, maybe.
and if you have 250, shares of Starbucks, and you walk into a Starbucks, your coffee is still $2.50, a cup. So when you walk into Betty Joe's cafe, you know Betty Joe. You know that you have ownership in that. You're not a consumer only, you're actually a consumer and an investor as well.
Exactly, and that's one of the things that I loved about, and still love about, the notion of, like when I was talking about the worker-owned cooperative. So there's an example in the Bay Area in Oakland. It's a bakery, And what happens is all of the owners feel there's just a different vibe about the place when you feel that this is something that you own. And that is something that it actually extends beyond just what you can get from a salary, a traditional salary. And I think that same concept exists here. So to patronize a store in your local neighborhood, it's not just because it's cheaper, right? You might actually be willing to pay a premium because of all of the other intangible benefits that you derive from going to that store, going to that local coffee shop, going to that bakery. Even in Chicago, we had a window company called Republic Windows that was, it actually was shut down. The owner shut the company down with like a day's notice. All of the staff fired with no prior notice, no nothing. And I think it was even around the holiday time. So again, you had this sort of disconnect between the ownership, the owner of the company, the CEO, and the employees. Well, now that the employees actually own the business, you're not going to have a situation where they're just going to close the doors and move to another state or another country without warning, right? And so they feel more of a sense of allegiance. And I think that feeling of a sense of allegiance, especially when we talk about the businesses in our communities, feeling a sense of allegiance and responsibility, not because you're forced to go there, right? It's not that anyone has a gun to your head to go there, but because you know that this is part of you. This is part of you, and it changes the way, even aesthetically, right? Like what we allow to be in the physical space around the store. Like this is a big issue, at least for me. What the aesthetics of the place are like, what we expect from that establishment is different when you feel like this is my thing, right?
Yeah, it's much different. And one of the things that I really press people to know is that this is something that happens now. The law is real. It's live. It's in action. When you go to vestlo.com, you're going to see our offering. It is there. So our project is built around redevelopment of the most abundant resource we have in our community, which are vacant buildings. So it's built around that. All of the metrics, everything you need to see there is there. It's nothing to do but for us to act. So the effects that the Native Sons Project will generate are here and a now effect. This is not 3-5 years before we can start to realize the fact that we did the presentation tonight and showed that each project, not just a project, each property, 37 business owners eat from that. Was that 19 skilled and 13 unskilled workers work on that project? Is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's an immediate impact. So that little guy on the corner, he walking up and down past that building all day. He walking past on his Snapchat, or he might be offering his finest products to the locals. But he's doing that.
What were those finest?
I don't know. Well, they're not on my crowdfunding site. I don't know. But
nice botanical.
Whatever the case is, now he gets to come in there, work in that building, doing demolition, getting himself acclimated to the workforce in a totally unsolicited situation. Some of these guys that get these jobs won't even really have asked for them. It'll be us literally walking up to them saying, hey, let me talk to you for a minute. I'm not afraid. Al's not afraid to do that. We've been in and around the community our whole life. We're not afraid to go engage the community that way and bring people to the table to make sure that part of the impact is met.
And I want to talk more about that, because that is really important. The fact that, at least with your specific business model, there is a component, a workforce component, and it's actually low barrier to entry jobs, essentially. So you can go to the guy with his botanicals. In fact, Al, I think I'm going to have to give you credit for coining that. I really like that. But you can actually go to the guys that are maybe in the neighborhood on the block, what have you, who'll be doing other things, and give them an opportunity to legitimately make money based upon your model. So talk a little bit more about the different layers of benefits from specifically the Native Sons model.
The one part of it is that that kid now, when he goes and he's working and rebuilding that house in that community, he's going to walk past there every day with a different sense of pride, knowing that he had something to do with the redevelopment of that 1 or that 2 or that 5 properties in his area. And he's going to tell his friends that he's in. Then they're going to be bringing them to us saying, man, they need jobs too. And we're going to have to call on more of you as we continue to do more of these. But, I mean, I'll go further into it, but that's one of those soft and very simple benefits of that is that it's about what we're dealing with is mentalities, overcoming paradigms of years of neglect in our mentalities about how we view business and how we even view what's sitting in our neighborhood every day. You know?
And that was the thing. So you guys each talked about how you guys got to the equity crowdfunding piece. For me, it actually started with a conversation that I had with now Alderman David Moore. And I want to send a special thank you to Alderman Moore. He's been a friend for more than 20 years.
I'm going to give a shout out to Alderman David Moore as well.
Yes.
Someone that I've had
Very,
the pleasure
very
of
great
working
guy.
with.
So when he first took office, I did look at his ward, and I said, you know, there's a lot of opportunity here. There's a lot of opportunity to, and I'll be very honest with you, to make a lot of money. Because like you said before, real estate is wealth. Real estate's been generational wealth for as long as time has been around. Each one of those boarded up nuisance properties is an opportunity to rebuild a community. When I brought him my idea, the very first thing he did was say, you know, it's good to make money. It's good to want to make a profit. But you have to also make an impact on the area as well. If you can do that, I'll support you 100%. So when I actually went to the drawing board, I actually did the model. I'm an old finance guy, so we do a lot of Excel. And normally when you think of a real estate project, you think of the cost to acquire the property, the cost to fix it, and you're really focusing on the profit. So A is the acquisition, B is the rehab, C is the profit. You spend so much time thinking on the C and a little bit on the A, you don't really look at the B. You try to just rush through the B to make sure you get the profit. And so what he forced me to do was to examine that rehab component. I'm not reinventing the wheel. I'm not a spiritual advisor. I'm just I'm a real estate developer. That's what I do. That's what I contribute to the world. And so we said, what if? Because we have to actually have carpenters, have HVAC people, roofers, the full gamut on these jobs. Very skilled craftsmen. But what if we took those craftsmen from within the neighborhood? And what if the only requirement that we have, aside from the fact that you're thorough, like I don't want somebody that does carpentry on the weekend and, you know, that sort of thing. Like I want you to be a fully licensed, bonded, be a GC or a sub-tradesman. But for each of those sub-trades, what if I asked you to take one guy from the corner and put him on your crew and teach him? That's the very important part. If it's a carpenter, teach him carpentry. I don't want you to just give him a job and he's got a little bit of money in his pocket and he can, you know, kind of ride up with the sunset. I want you to teach him enough that he can one day be your competition. He can start his own carpentry company. And like I said, when we actually blew that model out, 13 unskilled tradesmen per job. So 13 guys from the corner for every building that we do are fed as well as the other skilled tradesmen on the project. So that's actually what kind of drove the, you know, me getting into the equity crowdfunding space.
So we're going to take a quick break and then get back into that again. This is Amara Enyia, filling in from 9 to 12 on WVON 1690. We'll be right back.
Now, hold on. You know what he said earlier, right, at the event, was that when you got a guy like that and he's been hauling refrigerators up and down the stairs all day, he ain't got time to gangbang. When you know, all that's out the window. You know, you got 13, 14, 20 guys in the neighborhood working. The block is, you know, the corner is empty now, and Betty DeVos got to go somewhere else to get her botanicals, you know, because she must have been smoking something. she came up in there lit.
So Betty DeVos was lit yesterday. I guess that's the.
You got to shoot grizzly bears. I got to watch that. Maybe I won't. I probably won't. I probably won't even watch that.
It was really surreal. It was really surreal. But I think I definitely want to, when we come back, to talk more about what I call the auxiliary benefits.
Where's your live at?
Oh, my live is right here.
So we're going to go live to live. So
right.
This is my live and her live. Right.
It is.
This is live to live. Yeah, so folks in here bringing good information.
Hirsch and Al Prudeaux, who is Al. Say hi to all the folks.
Amara
How you doing,
Enyia,
everybody?
Al
Invest
Prudeaux.
in Native Sons of Chicago. Go to Native Sons of Chicago on Facebook right now and like it.
Native Sons of Chicago on Facebook. Like it.
I included
Love
both
it.
of the
Engage it.
websites. So
Invest.
So I typed the
Woo.
websites here for all of the viewers. The two websites. I typed it in there for them. But also go to Native Sons of Chicago on Facebook. Like the page, and then there's information on there.
Right, exactly.
Hey,
Chappelle,
Chappelle, you should be watching on my page, not hers. I'm just saying.
No, she knows what the deal is. She knows what the deal is. But this is good. I definitely want to, when we come back to talk more about the auxiliary benefits of the model, because there's one thing about the ownership and like profit and all of that, but it's the other about, which I think is the key. It's how do you leverage this beyond. Okay, good. So you can go hit those points so people can know, and also so that they can understand what it would look like if they wanted to. And then I also want to make sure, with however many minutes we have at the end of the show, I do want to talk a little bit about creating this sort of independence from the reliance on the non-forthcoming resources.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That come
Ooh,
from
let's do it.
and state.
Let's
So I want to devote some time
we
to
eat,
that.
breathe, and eat, sleep, and breathe. That conversation. Let's go. Let's do it. Yeah.
Well,
Right.
however many you have, I would love to
I got this many opinions about that. Yeah.
yeah, no, but that's the big thing. I mean,
Well, I think that there is a well, we'll talk about it on the thing,
Yeah,
but
we'll
there's
talk
a
about
way to make something out of nothing. There is a way to do it.
and even as we're going into this new administration, I mean, this is the same thing that happened in Illinois when we had an incoming governor, and now we have a new president coming in. And how do we use this as an opportunity to develop self-sufficiency and to recognize that the times are changing.
Yeah.
And the reliance on those in office to do what they should do. I mean, how many times have we been burned by that? So at what point do we say,
You stop relying on them, start relying on us.
When you know, Al has a lot of history in finance, and if any of my friends that are watching tonight are bankers, or if you ever pitched a company or business, you've heard them say that the best time to ask for money is when you don't need it. And so when we start to prove that we don't need external bank money, the bankers will be coming in like the Black Hand now, trying to get their beak wet and figure out, wait a minute, you hold on, Frank Lucas, you copying without, and you don't need me? You know, what's going on here? So you have to, or we, I should say, have to invest in what we're doing, invest in each other to a degree where now the external forces look in and say, wait a minute, they're not asking for money anymore. Now now those resources that were never available before, oh, they all over the place now. They run around in your community all day, every day.
right? And quick shout out to Audrey Moore. Yes, we're still on. Al Prudeaux is in here, so you'll see him.
Is he on there?
He is on my live feed.
Dave, you're supposed to be on mine, man. What is going on here?
Good evening, Chicago. We are back. This is Amara Enyia, spending the evening with you from 9 p.m. to 12 a.m. It has been a fantastic night. Just want to remind you quickly that I am on WVON every Tuesday, 9:20 a.m. and 5:20 p.m. with my commentary. I usually address a lot of policy issues that are local to Chicago, but also sometimes delving into states and national and international policy. So trying to inform the listeners, I think the best thing that we can do at this point in time is to make sure that we're operating with the most accurate and robust information as citizens, as residents, so that we can advocate for what we need to do, what we need to do on our behalf. So every Tuesday, 9:20 a.m., 5:20 p.m., I'm on WVON. This evening, I have with me in the studio, I'm very happy to have with me Dwayne Hirsch, who is a part of the Small Business Advocacy Council. colleague that I've had the pleasure of working with, especially on issues related to business development, business growth, economic development. He's also with Caldwell Banker in the real estate sector, and he is also a part of the Native Sons of Chicago. We've been talking about Native Sons this evening within the context of interstate equity crowdfunding. I also have with me in the studio Al Prudeaux, who is the managing director of Native Sons of Chicago, and has been explaining sort of the mechanics of what Native Sons is doing, but also the mechanics of this interstate equity crowdfunding platform and what it can do, how it can be leveraged to really transform communities and to create the kind of self-sufficiency and ownership that is so desperately needed in our neighborhoods, in our communities in Chicago. So before we went on the break, we were talking about what I call the auxiliary benefits of the model that Native Sons has developed, and that is beyond the profit and beyond just the notion of the real estate component of acquiring a building or rehabbing it. It is the ability to pull other people into that process in a way that benefits them and creates some self-sufficiency for them as well. So if you can talk more about some of those auxiliary benefits to the model that Native Sons has developed, I want the viewers and listeners to learn more about it.
So again, I want to throw a special shout out to Alderman David Moore. He's a friend and he's a very dedicated advocate for his community.
And a Simeon alumni, by the way. I'll throw that
As
out
he
there.
will tell you over and over again.
And so will I.
Oh, excellent. Oh, we have another one. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when we spoke originally, he challenged me to do two things. I'm sorry, three things actually. So with the Native Sons in particular, and any equity crowdfunding that I hope goes into this legislation, three things have to be accomplished. You have to obviously make a return for your investors. So you're buying at a certain point, you're putting some property, some dollars into it, and generating a profit, because you have to have the profit to be sustainable. But he also challenged us to improve the local economies. And that's kind of what I touched on before, with the hiring the resources and the manpower from within these communities, putting these people to work to not only be investors for their communities, but to also help them empower and literally rebuild their own communities. And the third component that we've really touched on is the idea, okay, we're doing these 3-unit buildings, these 2-unit buildings, 4 units, whatever the case may be, who are we selling them to? It wouldn't make sense for me to sell them to another investor that, again, and traditionally in our neighborhood, buys them and pulls those profits out of the community and takes them back to their community, wherever you classify their communities. So what we've done, we've actually set up a nice relationship with the Veterans Administration, whereby, at least for the first round of houses, and don't get me wrong, we'll sell them to neighbors in the community, but the Veterans Administration has allowed us to use VASH vouchers for a rental component to bring in those veterans to the neighborhoods, and is really strongly advocating for veterans to use their VA housing certificates, which is 100% financing, to now buy these properties and be owner occupants in them. We get to these areas, and a lot of these areas are clusters of rental units with no home ownership component to them. So yeah, we talk about putting the guys to work and reducing the crime aspect from that standpoint, but you also drastically reduce the crime aspect by having owner occupants on hand 24 hours a day. And we actually did the model. We used a 3-unit model, for example, and you can actually go to veslo.com, look up Native Sons of Chicago, and we actually have a PowerPoint presentation. And we actually kind of break this down, but we took a regular property that was $230,000, a 3-unit building that we rehabbed, $230,000. It generated a profit. The same one, it put 37 local businesses and skilled and non-skilled tradesmen to work, so it satisfied the local economy component. But when an average veteran used his certificate to buy the property, and you couple that with putting other veterans in the other 2 units with their VASH vouchers, that veteran was net positive on his mortgage, $600. So that's $600 that's now going into the local community every month, on top of whatever other money he makes in his normal profession. So in the example that we used, we deployed $150,000 into rehabbing this property that was dispersed between 37 local tradesmen. Now that may not seem like a lot of money per tradesman, but we're talking about doing upwards of 100 properties in the next 5 years. It does kind of keep everybody working. And that one person now that has that property, that owns it, that is that owner occupant, he now has generational wealth. Forget about all the other the topics that we've talked about and the benefits of all the stuff we're doing. One of the things that's eluded us for centuries has been generational wealth.
Yeah, and I really have to, and then we'll get to a caller that we have on the line. David, I see you on the line. But that issue of generational wealth has been one of the biggest obstacles also when it comes to capital, when it comes to having collateral. What do you use as collateral if you are applying for traditional bank financing? You don't have access to it. The other thing is, and when we talk about small businesses, one of the big things that I've seen is that some people can go to a rich uncle or their parents and say, hey, I need $15,000 in seed capital because I want to start my sandwich shop, or I want to start my laundromat. And their parents who have equity on a home that's been in the family for 100 years, they just have the savings, right, to give to their child or to give to their nephew or their niece, to give them that cushion when they're starting up. And that's something that in so many Black communities we have not been able to do because of the lack of generational wealth. And this is in part, and I have to put this out there officially, because of redlining, because of not having access to homes before FHA and all of that. And so because of institutional practices and policies that were put in place to keep Black people from having access to those things that would create the generational wealth, it's really it's put us at a disadvantage. So you're saying that this is one of those things that can help us, one of the things that helps us to work around some of the institutional barriers that we face.
Those barriers, the barriers that we face right now are more mental than they are anything. In the world that we live in now, we are in a world that is advanced to the point technologically where we're able to get access to things that we were often denied before, whether that's a book you could have read or that they didn't give you in school, like even Think and Grow Rich, right? They never gave us that in school. I found out about that a whole different way and read it online, and I'm amazed, right?
You read Ole
Right, right, of Mice and Men, right. But so when I think about this from a mindset perspective, when the mayor announced last week that they're going to build those 42 houses in Bronzeville in that little 4-block set, and everybody's saying, oh, there's gentrification and where people going to get the money from to buy these houses, first thing I thought was, how are we going to use equity crowdfunding to build the business base around that will service 42 families that's going to be making $200,000 or better a year? Yeah. That's what we need to be thinking about, because that's where the opportunity is. They'll come over there and they'll build it and people will buy it, but where they going to wash their clothes? Where they going to go and get a quick snack from? Where they going to eat at? Well, they can eat at Peaches, at Truth, at Waffle House and stuff like that, but we need more. We need to fill in those gaps. So yeah, go ahead and build those houses, bring that money, that income base into the community, and let us use equity crowdfunding to build the businesses that will service that. And that's a change in mindset, because what does the person think? You know, they ask that question every year, what do you get the man that has everything or whatever? What will you build? What will you create when money is no longer an object?
Right. And that also is the key, the link between housing and economic development. So you really can't do the two separately. So with housing, you have to consider what are the business implications, what kinds of businesses will be in that area where the housing exists, because every family will need to eat, they'll need to do their laundry, they'll need to go to a school, so all of those other things that are attendant to revitalizing communities, linking housing and economic development. I want to get to David, who has been patiently waiting on the south side, so he's somewhere nearby where we are. David, thank you for being so patient. You are on the air.
All right, thank you for taking my call. I need you to be a little patient with me because I don't know if my terminology is correct. Okay, when you purchase these units, does it pay out a dividend, or is it sort of like a retirement where you have to just buy the whole, cash the whole thing out? How are you getting paid?
For our our units, they're the latter. So you would actually, almost like a share of stock. If you bought a share of Starbucks stock today and it was worth 50 and you sold it a year from now for 60, you would sell the entire unit for 60. So with ours, you would be buying each unit at 250 and it would accumulate in value over the course of time. Now I will tell you this, these are investment dollars that you're using. This isn't something that you're looking to kind of flip out over the next like 6 to 9 months. And that's for a variety of reasons. If you keep it at least longer than 12 months, you get the long-term capital gains value out of that, which of course if you're not really used to investing, you don't really take those kind of things into account. But this, to answer your question very abruptly, we expect you to have this money tied up for at least 2 years, and each unit will gain in value.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So
Thank
much,
you for your
David.
question.
So we also had a question. I think we may have answered this a little bit, but I wanted to just make sure that it's been clear to our listeners and our viewers. And this is the question of how to recruit, train, and retain the labor and manpower from within the community. So the question is, are there existing resources, institutions that cater to this need, or is the onus on the potential business owner to do their due diligence to ensure that said labor is sourced within the community?
Yeah, everybody has a different goal as to what they want from this, right? The Native Sons model and the model that we just expressed about how we intend to use it to